So, good afternoon, honorable participants of our panel. So I'm really thankful for those who come today because the discussion about the genocidal war of Russia against Ukraine, I think it's a very important topic for all of us. And today we will have our distinguished panelists, and our discussion will have three parts. At the beginning, I would like to invite Aleksandra Matviichuk, Chairwoman for Center for Civil Liberties, Nobel Prize Laureate 2022 from Ukraine. And I would like to also express my gratitude to the Warsaw Security Forum, because this is the second time when we are raising the issue of and advocating for the recognition of Russian aggression as a genocide. And why it's really important? Because we are talking about Russian imperialism. And we in Ukraine know for centuries what Russian imperialism means, including the genocidal practice. And unfortunately, unpunished genocides through Holodomor during the Soviet Union, we are facing now the new genocide. And this is why it's really important today to discuss what could be done actually for global recognition. The genocidal nature of Russian crimes in Ukraine remains hidden by the lack of international awareness. Only 7 countries, Poland, Estonia, Latvia, Canada, Lithuania, Czechia, and Ireland, made political declarations recognizing the ongoing Russian genocide. Only 2 international institutions, the Parliamentary Assembly of Council of Europe and the European Parliament, highlighted in their resolution that Russian criminal actions in Ukraine may amount to genocide. And actually daily, all Ukrainians which are under bombs, missiles, shaheeds, they are feeling the real goal of Russia, to obliterate Ukrainians as a nation, as a people, and actually to kill us and to kill Ukrainian statehood. And if we read Russian propagandists like Dugin, it's clear in their goal by destroying Ukrainian statehood to build Euro-Asian empire. So Aleksandra Matviichuk became a voice of Ukrainians who were tortured to death, and also people who are still in captivity, waiting to be released. And since Lesia is very proactively advocating for Ukraine victory, so I would like to invite Lesia with the opening remarks, but asking a question. Aleksandra, you travel to many countries, not just transatlantic community, but also to Asian countries, Latin America, African continent. So how do you see what else could be done that we will be closer to this recognition of Russian aggression as a genocide? Please.
Thank you very much for providing me a floor. I think we must to explain that justice is precondition to sustainable peace in our part of the world where Russia for decades uses the war as a tool how to achieve its geopolitical interests, and for decades uses war crimes as the methods how to win the wars. Because unpunished evil grows. And all this hell which we now face in Ukraine, it's a result of total impunity which Russia enjoyed for decades. Russia committed horrible crimes in Chechnya, in Moldova, in Georgia, in Mali, in Libya, in Syria, in other countries of the world. Russia has never been punished. Russia believes they can do whatever they want. We must break this circle of impunity, not just for people in Ukraine, but in order to prevent a next Russian attack to the next nation, because there is no justification for Russia's action. My colleague, Ukrainian journalist Victoria Roshina, risked her life to tell us truth, what Russia is doing with people under occupation. She went to the occupied territories to collect evidence about illegal abduction, torture, sexual violence, and killing civilians there, and she disappeared. Now we know that she was abducted herself and severely tortured, secretly transported to Russia, where she was held with any official charges. We also know that she didn't receive medical care, and according to the words of her cellmate, her weight was only 30 kilograms. But we still have no idea how she died, because Russians refused to return her body to the grieving parents for 6 months, and when they did, we saw the body with a horrible sign of torture, and several internal organs were missing: eyes, brain, and part of trachea. I know Victoria personally, so for me it's a personal story, and I know that she was not just talented and brave, she believed that this is her journalist obligation to come to occupied territories, to reveal the truth and to tell us what Russia is doing about all these horrible crimes which is going on daily there. She believed that when we get this information, we'll start to take decisive actions and she can help people there. And I don't think that her belief is naive. And I know also that sometimes we see to justice just from the narrow perspective, like something which has impact to the past or to the future, but justice has a power to change our reality. How it works? Even if part of Russians start to be doubt that probably this time they will not avoid responsibility, this doubt will be converted in chilling effect of brutality of human rights violations. And because we speak about ongoing war, it means that with our decisive legal actions, we can save thousands, thousands, and thousands of lives. Thank you.
Thank you, Aleksandra. The pattern of Russian genocidal crimes has not changed since 2014. Only the scale has. More than 160,000 war crimes have been registered since February 2022 alone. So, and now I would like to invite our witnesses to do the testimony, and we are working on a special document providing all legal arguments, evidences why Russian aggression is a pure genocide. And it's not just about forceful deportation of kids, the crimes against kids, and also genocides through captured prisoners of war and civilians. So I would like now to invite to our panel Yaroslav Bazylevich, Ukrainian father who lost his wife and 3 daughters in a Russian missile attack in Lviv. Also, Yevhen Malik, Ukrainian veteran, defender of Mariupol, who's for 29 months he was in Russian captivity, in Russian prison, and Vladyslav Zhaivoronok, Ukrainian veteran, defender of Mariupol, Azovstal, and also prisoners of war. So thank you for coming here to Warsaw Security. And Yaroslav, when this tragedy happened and you lost all your family, I was thinking why we were unfortunately not successful convincing our partners to build a sky shield over Western Ukraine. And this is what we are now talking and advocating. And my colleague Lesia Robec is here with the initiative Sky Shield over Ukraine. And we do hope that Poland and other neighboring countries which are members of NATO and the EU will help us to defend civilians. And when this tragedy happened, we all were crying. because this is the crimes against Ukrainians, and it's a part of Russian genocide. So now you are very intensively traveling to different capitals and trying to convince to recognize Russia aggression as a genocide, and also to provide Ukraine more weapons that Russia is not able to kill more Ukrainians. So the floor is yours, please.
Дякую, що ви тут сьогодні. Дякую, що не мовчите.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you for having.
Please, the number 2 is Ukrainian. Number 1. Yes, please.
Я тут сьогодні, бо
Thank you. I would like to say that I'm here because I have experienced
чого не має переживати жодна людина.
something that nobody should experience, I guess.
Росія вбила мою сім'ю,
Russia has killed my family,
мою дружину Євгенію.
my wife, and my 3 daughters. It's not simply a war.
Геноцид України.
It's a genocide of Ukrainian people that Russian commits on everyday basis.
Кожен день російські ракети забирають життя.
Every day, Russian missiles take lives of Ukrainians. They do not only hit military objects, they destroyed families and our future.
Те, що сталося з
The
моїм
fact that has happened to my family, I think that is a critical military crime committed by Russia. I would like this case be the last possible tragic event, but I do know that thousands of Ukrainians still suffer from Russians.
ви могли би бачити
You might have a look at pictures. The territory that usually Russian troops live are completely destroyed and turned into total destructed territories. These are the territory that used to be full of life and livelihood. They have been transformed into the desert. And Russia is moving forward. If we do not manage to stop it now, the number of deaths is going to increase. The aim of Russia is to destroy us as a nation, and it will not respect the borders of any country in front of it. It will go faster and forward, and Russian drones are being attacking other European Union countries, including Poland, Estonia, and Norway. If we do not stop Russia now, your families will suffer as well.
моїх найрідніших
My dearest ones cannot be returned. I have never thought that I would have to participate in any kind of security forum like this. But at the moment, I feel that it's my commitment.
виразіть свої співчуття не лише словами, а
If you want to express your condolences, please do it by real decisive actions.
допоможіть створити
Help us to establish the common sky shield in order to protect our children and all children of the European Union.
це не просто оборонна ініціатива.
It's not simply a kind of protective initiative. It's a chance to say no, stop to the evil that is going to spread not only throughout Ukraine but throughout Europe as well. The world has no right to keep silent. If Russia is not punished and is not, if we are not united, it probably can happen again. The genocide cannot be ignored. It should be stopped immediately, and it depends on each of us. Thank you.
Дякую, Ярославе.
Thank you, Yaroslav.
So what we hearing from Russia Russia that Russia has exited the European Convention for Prevention of Torture. This needs no comments. So, and if you look into the real amount of prisoners of war and detained civilians, unfortunately, the data is not available because Russia does not fulfill its obligation to hold accounting of detained persons. However, the approximate figures vary from 6,000 to 8,000. And today, we have Yevhen Malik, Ukrainian veteran defender, after 29 months of captivity. So, Yevhen, we are thankful that you are here with us, and thank you for keep advocating for Ukraine victory, and the floor is yours.
Thank you very much. My name is Yevhen Malik. I'm a veteran of 36th Marine Brigade. I was fighting in Mariupol city from the very beginning of full-scale invasion. And yes, at the end of this battle, I got to the Russian captivity. And I spent 29 months on the territory of Russian Federation in the Russian prisons, such as Ryazhsk, prison number 2, and prison number 10 of Republic of Mordva. I've seen what Russians done in Mariupol. After that, I was a witness of the way they treat to the captivities, to all prisoners, no matter the nationality, because a lot of prisoners on the Russian territory were an international soldiers who served in Ukraine, legally in Ukrainian army. They were from Great Britain, from Monaco and other countries, and still Russian Federation, their soldiers didn't care about their nationalities. The treatment was the same, and I came here to remind you that the thing is that it is hard to believe, indeed, what you can see online, the facts which ex-prisoners, Ukrainian prisoners, says about the Russian captivity, that is true. I can understand that is hard to believe in all these facts. What are we talking about? But the thing is that more than 10 years ago, no one believed that Russian soldiers are in Crimea. And then, in fact, they were there. Nowadays, no one wants to believe that Russians are torturing people in prisons, in the captivity. No one wants to. But nowadays, a couple of days ago, Russia withdrew from the convention against tortures. So now, officially, on the Russian territory, Russian guards has a right to torture people. And this is the fact, this is the reality. So please try to understand and try to believe that this is the new reality, that we got this terroristic state on the eastern part of our continent. And we have to do something with it. Because, yes, Ukraine got the problems with that. Our friends are dying. But this is today. No one knows what's going to happen tomorrow. Thank you.
In addition to general violations and offenses, all released prisoners of war and civilians provide the detained statements about the specific and discriminate attitude to the Ukrainians who have stable and definite patriotic position and express their loyalty to Ukraine, Ukrainian language, Ukrainian culture and symbols, and had the record of service in Ukrainian armed forces or law enforcement authorities. So now I would like to give a floor to Vladyslav Zhaivoronok, Ukrainian veteran, defender of Mariupol, and expressing our gratitude for serving Ukraine, defending freedom, and the floor is yours.
Hello to everyone. My name is Vladyslav Zhaivoronok. I'm veteran of Azov regiment. I was prisoners of war in Russia, and I fight for Ukraine. I fight for Mariupol, and honestly, not only for Ukraine and not only for Mariupol. When I was invited here, it was before Russian drones flights over the European Union territory. So I hope now all our words will be listened more with more interest. We can explain a lot about what Russians do with prisoners of war in captivity or what they do with civilians. I want for you to feel all this problem. I met with guys from International Red Cross. I met with head of International Red Cross in Washington, D.C. in United States. And I see that these old organizations doesn't work. Russians now tell that now they don't use convention anti-torture, and honestly, for Ukrainian soldiers, for Ukrainian civilians, it doesn't matter because they don't feel any conventions in captivity before this. So my friends are still in captivity, more than 3 years. It's the only friends who survived during this war. You can see different videos in internet. Some of them it's about what Russians do with Ukrainians from Ukrainian side. Videos from Ukrainian side. Some videos you can find from Russian side, and you need to understand situations in which this video was making. For example, if you was a father of family who was captured in Mariupol, doesn't matter are you military or you civilian. When they ask you on a video who destroyed Mariupol, you have the only way if you want to survive and if you want to live for your family. You can answer the way what Russians want to hear. Try to ask not only Ukrainians about what Russian soldiers do in Ukraine. For European Union, it's you have a more easy way. You can ask Germans' grandmas about what Russian soldiers do in Germany after Second World War or during this war. About prisoners of war, ask for Germany grandpas what Russians do with them in Russians' captivity, in Soviet captivities. Nothing changes in this. I want for everyone, you must understand that safety is not guaranteed in this world now. Now we live in a world in which International Red Cross cannot get access into Russian prisons. Steven Seagal can have this access, but International Red Cross, biggest humanitarian organization in history, cannot do this. After this, after 3 years of torture for our guys, for soldiers who fight for all Europe, it's a fact because now drones above Europe, Russian drones, and nobody can help them. We talk about justice, about what justice we talk. I don't see the ways how to get this justice if we cannot move these Russian soldiers or workers of Russian prisoners in courts. So we must to fight with Russia. We must to find a way how to do this physically, not just about words. If you have fire in your building, you don't need to have conversations about how we need to fight with this fire. You need to equip it, to get equipment for firefighters. You must to do something physically. Thank you.
Thank you so much, and I fully support that only Ukrainian victory and Russian defeat. This is the way to stop the Russian war crimes, crimes against humanity, Russian act of aggression, Russian genocide against Ukraine. So thank you for joining this panel, and now I would like to invite our distinguished experts to continue our discussion and providing their ideas, what else could be done to achieve justice and accountability. Дякуємо дуже. And now I would like to invite Bjørn Berge, Deputy Secretary General, Council of Europe, Marko Mihkelson, Member of Parliament, Estonia, Kajsa, Ollongren, EU Special Representative for Human Rights, and Aleksandra Uznańska-Wiśniewska, Member of Sejm, Chair of the Polish-American Parliamentary Group, and also Member of the Foreign Relations Committee. So I would like to start from the question to Bjørn Berge as a Deputy Secretary General representing Council of Europe, because in May 2025, this year, the Lviv statement by foreign ministers and diplomats from over 35 countries called for the creation of the special tribunal for the crime of aggression. So this is really important step achieving justice, because for us Ukrainians, the nation of heroes, it's really important that this time Russian imperialism with genocidal war will not go unpunished. So this is the key, and when all this talks about ceasefire, peaceful settlement, and when we were really very humiliated seeing Putin in Alaska as rewarding him with the red carpet, so we consider Putin as a war criminal, and we would like to see him in The Hague, but not in Alaska. And for us, since it's for centuries of Russian imperialism, and not just Ukraine, as Aleksandra Matviichuk mentioned, it's also the genocide that Russia committed against Chechens. So, Mr. Berge, what you represent Council of Europe. We are thankful for this important Lviv statement. Yes, it was just after the parade in Moscow. We had this gathering important in Ukraine. Could you explain and tell us more about the details and how Council of Europe and all these 35 countries and more are working on mechanism to punish Russia?
Oh, thank you very much. And first of all, thank you for the very strong and powerful testimonies from the witnesses that we just heard. And I think it was you, Yaroslav, who said that we need decisive action. And this is what we are doing when it comes to justice. Because you mentioned the special tribunal on the crime of aggression. And crime of aggression is really the worst of all crimes. Why? Because this is the decision by a political leader to invade and try to conquer another country. Because after that, you get all the other war crimes, all the abuses, all the violations of human rights. And so far, you have to go back actually to the Second World War and after the Second World War, where you had the Nuremberg trial. And at that time, the talk about having a trial on the crime against peace. And the US chief prosecutor at that time, I remember it very well, and I read the whole statement that he gave. He warned the world and said that we need this type of a tribunal on a permanent basis, and on the war against peace, and as we call it today, the war of aggression, the crime of aggression. Since then, during the Cold War, nothing happened. The International Criminal Court, which has a fundamental role when it comes to international justice, they can deal with genocide, they can deal with war crimes of different, they can also deal with the crime against humanity, but they cannot deal with this issue, the crime of aggression. So what happened actually was, it was a well-known UK lawyer, Philip Sands. I don't know if many of you know him. He wrote a piece in the Financial Times 4 days after the Russian invasion. And he said, now is the time for the world to stand up so we can take and indict the Russian President Putin for what he has done. And we need a special tribunal on the crime of aggression. And then international lawyers came together. There was a special event at Chatham House. And then work started. In the Council of Europe, I represent the Council of Europe. We have 46 European countries, all European countries except Russia and Belarus. And this, with experts from over 40 countries, with the EU, they came to an agreement in record time. And you mentioned the Lviv Declaration, endorsed by all the foreign ministers in Lviv at that time. 2 weeks later, President Zelensky came to Strasbourg, where the Council of Europe is seated, and signed a treaty asking the Council of Europe to set up this special tribunal on the crime of aggression. And this we are doing now. And this is legally crucial because you're filling a hole in international law, and politically it's important. Because this is, this is fundamental for a rule-based international order. There might be smaller Putins around this world who has this in his mind that maybe they should use the opportunity now to take certain part of another country. But no, we need this special tribunal, and now it's up really to all the countries that have joined this work to take the next steps and help us set it up. So this is really important work, and one of the elements in providing justice. There are other elements that I can come back to if you want me to, but with that at least.
Thank you so much. And now I would like to ask Kajsa Ollongren, EU Special Representative for Human Rights, former Minister of Defense of Netherlands, and to express our gratitude for your efforts, especially helping Ukrainian armed forces and in the F-16 campaign to Ukraine, your leadership, and all Ukrainians who were traveling and meeting with you. Really remember your strong proactive position. So this is really very thankful, because at the beginning of full-scale war, when we were demanding the no-fly zone and asking NATO to act now to close the sky and not to allow Russian bombs, especially in Mariupol, and to do these genocidal actions. So it was really important to see the humanitarian mission of international organizations preventing all Russian war crimes and crimes against humanity. So now in the new role, how do you see that, because we don't want that justice could be sailed at the negotiations table, believing that Russia might stop, because we are observing Ukrainians, and as a former head of the Foreign Relations Committee, I remember 2014, 2019, all this naive approach from our partners telling us Ukrainians don't ask lethal weapon, only political diplomatic solution, only peaceful settlement. And we had Minsk I, Minsk II. When we were believing that Russia might deliver long-lasting ceasefire, Russia was preparing for the full-scale war. So now sometimes I have this déjà vu when someone telling, no, only through negotiations we could end the war. But I think without justice, we could never achieve a sustainable peace and without Russian punishment? How do you see from this perspective? Because it seems like for Russia, human rights means nothing.
Thank you for your introduction, and thank you for organizing this event. I think it's very strong to first hear from first-hand witnesses what they have experienced, and I think it's very important that we hear their voices. It makes it real, it touches people's hearts, and it should touch all of us, and it should encourage us to continue the support for Ukraine. And I think now that I work on human rights on behalf of the EU, accountability is a very important part of that, because as you say, without accountability, there is impunity. And impunity means that what Russia has done to Ukraine during this large-scale invasion, but also before, of course, that it is in a way not punished and therefore rewarded. And it will encourage Russia, but also other nations around the world who might have the same idea, that they could take advantage of their strength vis-à-vis a weaker neighbor to simply invade and annex parts of a country, and with huge human suffering because of the innocent victims, the civilians, the children that are the victims of this. In the case of Ukraine, even abducted and forcefully transported to Russia, and these are war crimes. These are crimes against humanity. These are things that we can never just allow to happen. And human rights are being violated every day, and that means that we always have to stand up to point this out and to do everything that we can to get this accountability. And I have worked on this as a Minister of Defense, working with Ukraine to collect evidence, to build the cases, to eventually be prosecuted either in Ukraine or in international courts. And I agree very much on the special tribunal, because that was a void in our legal system that is going to be filled by the special tribunal against the crimes of aggression. But we also have, besides this special tribunal, we have the International Criminal Court, and the International Criminal Court has already acted with indictment against President Putin and others, especially also on the crime against the children. I think this is very important, and it is our obligation as European countries and as all signatories of the Rome Statute to enable the International Criminal Court to do this important work in independence. It's up to them to decide who to prosecute for what crimes, to collect the evidence, but we can support them in that important work. And I think it was very strong that Ukraine joined the signatories to the Rome Statute, which has enabled us to join forces on accountability. And I really believe, we are seeing such terrible things happening to prisoners of war, to innocent people that are subjected to torture, to sexual violence, to atrocities that you never want to happen. And the only thing that we can do against this, besides supporting, of course, Ukraine with money and weapons, it is to stand up very strongly for justice, to prevail. And this is what I believe. So human rights, it's not something abstract. Human rights is about all of us. It is about giving people agency. It is about protecting civilians in war situations. It's about international humanitarian law. And that Russia does not abide to these rules that we have created internationally doesn't mean that we shouldn't. I think that is also one of the strong things in Ukraine. And I think that is also the whole motivation for the strong Ukrainian people, that they want to live in freedom, that they want to regain their independence and their sovereignty for their whole country, because that's what they believe in. They believe in these values of democracy and freedom, values that also in our part of Europe we believe very strongly. And that brings us together. And I will do what I can on behalf of the European Union to fight for these human rights for every single Ukrainian.
Thank you so much. And now I would like to ask Marko Mihkelson, who is the chairman of the Foreign Affairs Committee of Estonian Parliament, and also good friend of Ukraine, who's always visiting Kyiv and also frontline, helping Ukrainian armed forces and we are very thankful, and also advocating for tougher economic sanctions, moving from sanctions to total economic isolation of Russia, and not to fuel the Russian war machine with more resources. So this is really important, Marko. Your parliament, and including others, another 6, they made these political declarations recognizing Russian aggression as a genocide. So how do you see that we have coalition of willing? Also, we, unfortunately, at the UN level, Russian aggression was recognized after the full-scale war in March 2022. However, we were advocating for this recognition of Russian action in Ukraine as aggression much earlier. So on MP's level, what could be done that the number of countries which are joining these political statements and then governments supporting this will be growing?
Thank you, Hanna, and thank you organizing this extremely important discussion here. Specifically, of course, thank you to you, dear friends from Ukraine, to tell us about realities of Russian barbarism and what they do today in this minute, actually. I will start with a short personal note that it happens that I have been face to face with Russian imperialism now for more than 30 years, first as a journalist and now as a politician. I was in Moscow correspondent in mid-90s, and I covered actually first Chechen war and witnessed pretty closely what the Russian imperial war looks like, and unfortunately that time then tens of thousands of Chechens were killed, tortured, annihilated. Unfortunately, the world was silent. I remind you that Russia was accepted as a member of Council of Europe in 1996 with blood in their hands. And now, as you mentioned, yes, I have been in Ukraine many times, not from February 2022, but when we talk about Russian aggression from first days of 2014. And ever since, visiting not only Kiev, but also different places in and close to front lines. And I have many friends, actually, who are fighting for us and for Ukraine right now. But I would like to just remind, yes, you mentioned Estonia and the Estonian Parliament. Actually, I looked back and our first statement on Russian aggression and also on need for accountability and international tribunal, we adopted when? In the evening of 23rd of February, 6 hours before war started. It was clear for us what is coming. It was clear for us what has happened since 2014 in Ukraine, and we called international action. And every word what was actually adopted that time in Estonian Parliament is very relevant today as well. We called actually also to give Ukraine EU candidate status and also to make Ukraine as soon as possible member of NATO. We recognized in April in another statement, as you mentioned, Hanna, also what is happening in Ukraine. This is genocide. And unfortunately, it doesn't have not been echoed back as much as we would like to see today. I must argue that actually I've been in Estonian Parliament now for 22 years, since 2003. And I've never seen such a unity, actually, sincere unity among our allies and partners in Europe and beyond. And this unity has been created only thanks to Ukraine. That we understand what is at stake and what should be done. And this unity also tells you that alone we are very vulnerable. And this is why Ukraine must also understand, and I hope you do, that you are not alone. those who are fighting, they're fighting for us. And those who are standing firmly against Russian imperialism, they know that we all actually behind of it. But we haven't not done enough. And I argue that we have done a lot more words than real action. And during this forum here, but during other forums as well, I feel like I am a parrot, the person who says time to time the same thing. We have to understand that without defeating Russian imperialism, Russian war in Europe, there will be no peace. There will be no just peace in Europe. And this is the first question when it comes to accountability, and also to bring those who committed crimes, the highest crimes against peace, which is launching aggression. They have to be brought to the justice. And then it's question, what is happening right now? This is schizophrenic situation. At one moment we say, oh, we have to negotiate in order to make peace. But how come? How then about accountability? You know, those we would like to negotiate, not me, but those who would like to negotiate and are negotiating somehow. Negotiating with war criminals, legitimizing with that actually their sort of immunity and also impunity. And this is why I argue that Russia has shown that they don't want peace, they don't want ceasefire, they don't want anything. They want war, destruction, torture, killing, genocide. The only way how to stop this, we have to defeat Russia with military force, helping Ukraine to do that and also helping with real force what is needed for that, and stay very firm and very committed that this time this impunity will not, you know, stay alive, let's say. And this is why now in Council of Europe, Estonia has been very active helping to get this consensus there. Now it's up to governments, actually, to really act and put this instrument into work.
Thank you, Marko. And I would like to ask Aleksandra, as a member of Polish Sejm and also chair of the Polish-American Parliamentary Group, because here in Europe, it seems like we have this understanding that Russia has to be accountable for the genocide, and Polish Sejm also adopted a political statement, a resolution recognizing Russian aggression as a genocide. But what we are seeing during the Trump administration, it seems like the international rules-based order with the full respect of territorial integrity and sovereignty. So it's not something that is really in value of this presidency. But for all these years, we are advocating for recognizing Russian aggression as a genocide, also labeling Russia as a state sponsor of terrorism, what European Parliament did several years ago, when we were really very thankful. How do you see in your contacts with the US congressman, as a member and as a chairwoman of the Polish-American Parliamentary Group, what could be done? Because with what we've seen from the beginning of September, there are some new voices in US Congress demanding not just secondary sanctions, but also recognition of Russia as a state sponsor of terror. And all the visitors from the US, which are under ballistic and missile attacks, and observing what's happening in the destroyed residential buildings, killed innocent civilians. It's a daily terror, and it's now even the deprivation of the sleeping. It's another psychological terror, attack on mental health. So do you have like a plans, and maybe you need support from Estonian, or we have United for Ukraine Interparliamentary Group in the European Parliament, which also includes representatives of national parliament. So we need transatlantic community as one voice, demanding justice, accountability, because this is a true way towards a just peace.
Thank you very much, Hannah. So perhaps before I answer the question, I just wanted to address our guests from Ukraine, our witnesses and survivors. I've been deeply moved and shaken by your words. I still have goosebumps. And Sir Yaroslav, Sir Vladyslav, and Sir Yevhen, dziękuję. I wanted to say that I'm deeply, deeply sorry for the unspeakable violence that each of you, that you two personally and your family, Sir Yaroslav, has endured. And that I can only hope that you'll find enough meaning, light, and justice, and support from us, your allies, to not compensate for your pain, because that is impossible. And we will not be able to bring and compensate for your loss, but to at least to find enough sufficient defiance to carry your powerful testimony forward. Dużo dziękujemy, sława Ukrainie.
Героям слава.
And coming back to your question, Hannah, I think I will do everything in my power as the chair of the Polish-American Parliamentary Group to speak truth to power, to whoever sits in the White House, regardless if that's a Democrat or Republican administration, and to prevent a rupture in our understanding of what is actually happening. Because at present, whether Europe wants it or not, we do not have an autonomous military capabilities, unfortunately. We have to invest in them. But in terms of our vision and imagination, regardless of the negotiations on a very high level, which we will push to understand our understanding of the Russian threat and Russian imperialism, we have to, as Europeans as well, perhaps remind ourselves of the time where the United States of America did not exist, but the Russian threat surely did. And we as Europeans faced it for many centuries before. So perhaps we have to tap into that a little. But if I can also give a little of my personal motivation, as it was also given here before, I serve as the member of the parliament currently today. But shortly before I was elected, I had one of the greatest privileges of my life to serve in Ukraine, running a humanitarian mission for 12 months between April 2022 to April 2023. On behalf of Intersos, an Italian humanitarian organization providing medical and psychosocial humanitarian assistance on the front line. And the direct reason why I try to work on this Ukraine dossier, on our war dossier, is the bombing that happened on the 14th of January, where a hypersonic missile, a Kinjal, hit next to our office in Dnipro, and 236 apartments collapsed. And I was at the time a barely 29-year-old humanitarian aid worker, and seeing the scale of the international humanitarian law violations, seeing the scale of the carnage of what is a blatant and obvious genocide, both in terms of intent of Putin and the Russian Federation and the actions and the barbarity of them, it was unspeakable. It was the first time that I considered returning back to try to seek for bigger tools of positive impact. And I have to say that today, just a reminder, today is 1,314th day of the full scale of Russian invasion, which actually, of course, occurred 10 years back, but of a full-scale Russian invasion. And brave and battered Ukraine is fighting day in, day out, waking up daily to pools of blood of your beloved ones from yet another drone, Shahed, hypersonic missile, ballistic missile, hitting another kindergarten, school, civilian infrastructure. While we as Europeans, and we as with our American colleagues, of course, are sitting here in comfort, looking for a strategy that isn't yet clearly defined even. And what I wanted to say is that in Poland recently, we have had a series of 3 elections, which led to increasing populist voices re-emerging, some of them blatantly copying and sharing Russian disinformation, but also slightly populist voices even penetrating to the mainstream of the democratic parties. And what I wanted to say is that we cannot fall into this populist trap. Ukraine is fighting today a pure David versus Goliath fight. And the fact that Ukraine managed to push Russian aggression away in the first days of the conflict, and the fact that behind Przemysl or Rzeszów, Polish cities, we still have a fighting, bleeding out Ukraine rather than Russian Federation, that would put a dramatic shadow over the life of ours and our children for years to come, is only due to the bravery of the Ukrainian army and defiance of Ukrainian civilians. Poland continues pushing for sanctions against Russia, for stronger sanctions. We believe that the cost on the aggressor must be unbearable. We would like our other European partners to understand that the Russian frozen assets and the windfall revenues from these frozen assets must be used to use the assets of Moscow to rebuild what has destroyed in Ukraine. That we must push for the global political consensus on the recognition of the genocide, from the very fact that Vladimir Putin, Sergei Lavrov, and all the rest of the Kremlin currently today is speaking, first of all, of Ukraine as an artificial state, of Ukraine that doesn't have a right to exist, so denying it is a blatant 101 genocide handbook, so denying the right to existence. Providing papers and press releases on what should be done to Ukrainians prior to the conflict, including elimination of the Ukrainian intellectual elites, de-Ukrainization, Russification, referring, using a very classic genocidal language to Ukrainians as vermin, excuse me, I'm quoting, as vermin, as parasites, as pigs. Very, very classic use of genocidal language, spreading it using the state propaganda worldwide, beyond Russia, beyond Europe, to global south, to Asia, to Africa, spreading that messages, which is why I believe we are so slow to respond, because historically it's the first time that we're dealing with a state which actually has a worldwide TV and internet networks to spread their lies. And we have to resist that. And only to finish off, I'd like to say that we also have, of course, a clear signs of genocide on the level of the action, from the killings to setting up of the torture facilities, which were mentioned, to forcibly kidnapping Ukrainian children to Russia, with over 210 Russian facilities, both inside Russia and on the Russian-occupied territories in Ukraine, that are Russifying currently Ukrainian children, which is exactly the same thing which we saw the thing being done to the Polish children by the Nazi regime. We have to name it, we have to speak truth to power, both to our American colleagues and our European allies, and provide hope to our brave Ukrainian colleagues fighting. And thank you for that fight. Thank you.
Thank you so much for this powerful statement. And really, we are now fighting, not now all Ukrainian government, all our partners, to bring kids back. Because the situation when Ukrainian deported children are forcefully and rapidly adopted by Russian families, when their identity, language, so they are trying to turn them like Russian citizens. This is what China is doing with Uyghurs. In the camps, the same Russians are doing. But also, teenagers are behaved and trained in military facilities with propagandist anti-Ukrainian educational curricula, and also young Ukrainian boys are already being put on record for future conscriptions to Russian armed forces. Some Ukrainian boys have already died fighting against Ukrainian armed forces. All the rest might potentially join Russian army and be used not just for aggression against Ukraine, but for the imperialistic ambition of Russian, which is beyond Ukrainian borders. Which is really important to understand that why we are fighting to deoccupy all our territories, because we are fighting for our people, kids, because kids are being conscripted to Russian armed forces. So it's a future of Russian armed forces which will be killing not just the Ukrainians with all anti-Ukrainian sentiment, but also against Europe, against Western civilization. And thank you for mentioning also the Russian, even the language, how they narratives, it's with genocidal narratives. We produced together with the Direct Initiative a paper with our partners from Canada, Roman Son and Ariana Geek, Protect Humanity by Defending Ukrainians from the Ongoing Russian Genocide. There is a number of actions which are needed, starting from the recognition, but also what worries us in Ukraine, that Russia, besides this genocidal practice, they are also recently, there was an assassination of Ukrainian member of parliament, former speaker of Ukrainian parliament, Andriy Parubiy, and it's not the first time, but previously it happened also in Lviv with Irina Farion, with another activist in Odessa. So Russia is trying during the genocide also through assassinations to kill political and military elites in Ukraine and to destabilize the morale of Ukrainian society. So I think this is why sanctions. You mentioned confiscation of Russian sovereign assets, full blockade of Russian trade and Baltic Sea and Black Sea, also oil embargo. Russia should not get billions from the EU and other partners which are fueling the war machine. So these actions which we advocating for all the years, together with the military support, more, bigger scale, this is really important. So now I'm opening the floor for our participants of the discussion. So who is ready to ask the first question? Because you heard the speech from Aleksandra, Matviichuk, our witnesses, and our distinguished experts representing different institutions and parliaments. So please introduce yourself and questions whom you would like to ask.
Hello. First of all, thank you all the distinguished panelists for your statements, as well as witnesses for your testimonies. My name is Natalia Yaroslav. I am a chief expert at the Polish Ministry of Justice, but I'm also co-founder and board member of an NGO called OSINT for Ukraine, where we utilize OSINT-gathered evidence for a pursuit of justice. My question is, in the course of my work at my NGO, for various months we gathered OSINT-related evidence on illegal transfer of kids. We submitted our case to the International Criminal Court after months and months of working. Just for the ICC workers in a private conversation to tell us that they don't really, at the moment, have the capacity and the manpower to really get into that and investigate that. I do have a question because we've set up the Special Tribunal for Ukraine, which I agree fills in the gap that is really necessary. But I do have a question: how can we straighten the already existing legal international accountability bodies? Also, in the statements of one of the witnesses, we could hear the statement that the international organizations are underperforming, and I do happen to agree with that statement. So my question is, how can we straighten the already existing legal accountability bodies, international organizations? How can we straighten the collaboration in between NGOs, civil societies, and regional actions that are trying to focus on accountability and justice? Because there's no long-lasting peace without justice. And coming from an international criminal lawyer myself, it is extremely hard these days to fight for accountability and fight for justice due to the system, due to other obstacles. How can we tackle that? Thank you.
Thank you for this, I would say, very important question, and I know who is going to start to answer it.
Oh, thank you very much for this crucial question. And I want to be very concrete. And of course, we cannot wait until the end of the war to bring justice. We have to start that work now, to gather evidence, to have the claims registered. And here I just want to say that it's important ongoing work now. A register of damage for Ukraine has been established in The Hague by 45 countries. We even have cooperation with the whole network or a platform of over 50 NGOs in Ukraine. And what is happening is that those who have been tortured, those who have lost their families, those adopted children, as you mentioned, those who have lost their property, has been destroyed by Russian missiles and drones. I mean, there are categories here. They can now use their mobile phone, the DIA app, which is a very efficient Ukrainian system on their mobile phones, and file claims directly to this Register of Damage in The Hague, established by all of these countries and also by the Council of Europe. And so far, we have over 60,000 claims. I think it would be hundreds of thousands. And right now, it's not enough just to register these claims. You need to have them adjudicated, looked into, and so on. So now we are actually establishing a claims commission. And that is not enough either, you know, to register the claims, have them adjudicated. There has to be a compensation to the victims. And this is going to be quite a task, I think. And this is going to be linked, I think, to the overall reconstruction and rebuilding of Ukraine. And there will be massive sums of money that these people are entitled to through this process. So I want to be concrete. This is action ongoing, and we need to do this right now. And so this is a partial response to you. Of course, the International Criminal Court are working on several cases. I think you mentioned it also, Kajsa. They even indicted President Putin and also I think it's the ombudsperson for children in Russia on the basis of these abductions of the children. They will look into genocide, war crimes, and so on. So there is a whole machinery going on there. So I think this is important to mention.
Kajsa, you would like?
Yes, very briefly, I agree. But I think it's also important to be always critical and see what we can do more. This is in place. But the ICC also depends on countries to second experts to the ICC so that they can do their important work, also field work. They depend on the cooperation with NGOs. Always ask yourself, can we do more? And I think we can do more. And we must encourage member states of the European Union to step in and to step up and to finance these experts. So I think you're very right to raise the issue because we can be saying the right things, but we also have to put our money where our mouth is to be sure. And this is something really for the long term. This is going to take time. And also in Ukraine, it will take time. There are so many cases. This is not something that we can stop at some point. It will take maybe even a decades until this is done, but we cannot give up on it.
Yes, I think also at the same time, then to tackle those issues on the level of justice, and so it is extremely important to have a political will to do that. To understand how important and crucially important it is, not only for Ukrainians, but also for all of us, and even for memory of those who were killed, tortured, deported throughout the time Russian imperialism, at least during the last 100 years, have caused for many nations. So, and this is where Estonia, my country, I know Poland, others rally for this kind of strong unity among allies and partners, that we should not, rest until we get this justice done. So, but for that we need a lot of more efforts, including also the kind of political will to fight for a win and victory.
Yes, Aleksandra, and there is more questions, please.
Okay. If I only might add, perhaps on the humanitarian organizations and the INGOs and the UN, which seem to be a bit toothless, to be frank with you, is that when I think of the humanitarian sector, which I have left and which I admire dearly, but in terms of the influences and impact. Sometimes I have felt, quoting Linda Polman in her book on the humanitarian sector, she says that humanitarian organizations, even though they're doing an incredible work, sometimes it's a bit as if you were, and now it's brutal, giving out sandwiches at the gates of Auschwitz. And what she means is that, it's as if you were constantly putting a band-aid on a wound which keeps getting shot. And the real answers are actually, of course, political. And of course, UN Security Council is paralyzed with Russia and China being in it. Here's a question if it's better to have Russia at the table or not at the table at all. There was a brief period of time where the Soviet Union was not. Then you have international NGOs, humanitarian organizations, which are providing life-saving humanitarian assistance, risking their lives on the ground, but because they need to have operational access, they cannot call out the war crimes. So they have to stay operationally neutral, and they cannot even call, who's done what, because they have to have access to the front line as much as possible and be accepted as much as possible by both sides. Then you have the human rights organizations, which, like Amnesty, which are calling out the war crimes, but then they cannot be there on the ground. Then they lose access. So there's a complicated scenario, but a complicated web. But what I wanted to say is that here, of course, we represent political organizations and international organizations and means of justice. But each of you in this room, if I can address our guests here, each of you in this room, on average, I'm making an assumption right now, but combines skills, abilities, intellect, and resources that and perhaps today on this conference, that is extremely rare on the level of Europe, perhaps. But with your skills and resources and intellect comes responsibility. I believe that today's world around us calls for responsibility. And each of you here, whether you work for a Ministry of Justice or for a think tank or for an NGO, has a role to play. And in order for us right now to prevail over these forces of evil and injustice and darkness, not only from Russia, but increasingly from North Korea, China, Iran, and other countries that are squeezing us in this imperialist sandwich. In order for us to prevail, each of us here has to work tirelessly and ceaselessly for the preservation of the values of human dignity, human rights, individual freedom, and sovereignty. And I encourage each of you to believe in the power that you have individually and to get to work together. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Actually, we started many years ago when Russia started its aggression in 2014. We started to demand the reform of the United Nations Security Council to remove the veto right from the permanent members. But unfortunately, there is no political will, and we understand that humanity needs a functional UN Security Council that would be capable of performing its duty and to maintain world peace, not just to protect the perpetrators of the war of aggression. This is really important, but Russia always uses the veto right as a right to kill, right to commit genocide and others, but I saw more questions. Please, could you bring the microphones to these two ladies?
Thank you very much for this event and for speaking about this painful topic. Really, it's very hard to hear that essentially we don't have mechanisms in the world to bring direct perpetrators of war crimes to justice right now. And I'm the steering committee member of the Business for Ukraine Coalition. So we deal with not direct responsibility, but corporate complicity. Businesses who support Russia to commit those war crimes. And what we're currently trying to do, we are investigating in particular Western companies who supply critical technology that kill Ukrainians. And all those horrible war crimes, including this horrible tragedy of Bazylevich family, They are done with high precision munitions that require microchips, require navigation modules, require memory boards, and so on. And we study Shahed drones, we study missiles, and these components, they come from the United States, from the Netherlands, from Switzerland, and so on. And so in your experience, do you know of any maybe successful cases when we can basically demonstrate that a company, due to lack of due diligence, caused harm to civilians, and that this kind of strategic litigation can change their rules of the game? Because currently those companies, they don't really take it very seriously, because they say that we can't control it, we're not guilty that Russia used it to kill people. Do you think something can be done to change the way things are right now? Thank you.
Thank you for this. Maybe we'll take another question, and then please, can you give the mic to, yes.
Thank you. My name is Anna Richards, and I'm sort of a legal academic that works with a bunch of think tanks, especially in the UK. And what I'm seeing here in real time is we're shifting from a rights-based international order that's more, natural rights-based, to a positivist international order that's guaranteed within a multipolar world by sort of partly China, partly the United States. And how we're seeing that change in front of us right now is the European negotiation on Friedrich Merz's proposal on what to do with the interest on Russian assets and how to use that interest to fund the defense effort in Ukraine. So I think this is a particular opportunity for countries in our part of Europe that are wealthier right now than countries in Western Europe, to try and turn this new international order that's more property law-based, that's more positivist, to our own advantage in creating the new international system that will be created over the next 2 to 3 years. And because I worked a little bit on trying to advise the Conservative Party in the UK on what the consequences might be of leaving the ECHR and whether or not that's a good thing to do, my work was slightly overtaken by history, because the Reform Party stood up and said, right, we're just going to do it. And we're going to see more and more of that. So I'm very keen that our rules-based international order conversations don't just get overtaken by people who can speak more loudly about these questions. And I want to see how we can turn how wealthy we're getting, particularly in Poland, into enforcement mechanisms. Because right now the problem with Merz's proposal is that literally 2 hours ago the Financial Times reported that France is slightly worried that because they're bankrupt already, this will even further undermine their credit rating on the international stage. So how do we try and turn the growing wealth of Central and Eastern Europe into power on the international law stage? Thank you.
Very interesting question. So the first question was about Russian circumvention of sanctions and also loopholes, and how components, microchips and others are in Russian kinzhals. What could be done? Maybe, Kajsa, we could start from you with your previous experience and background as a Minister of Defense.
Of course, I'll be happy to. And maybe I can also then answer the second question, because that is more for my current portfolio and mandate. Well, the first one is of course a very relevant topic, and it's very important that also from the business community and civil society we keep addressing this issue. And it has also to do with the new technology and the new weapons that are being used, the drones, autonomous systems, and the components that you need for them. We know also Ukraine, which has created an extraordinary strong defense industry now in country, also relies on, let's say, the same countries to provide them both with the raw materials and the components to build those weapons. So this is I think it's crucial. We know we have the evidence. Ukraine has gathered the evidence. We have it that indeed in the weapons used against Ukraine there are components coming from our countries. It is completely unacceptable. So we have to raise this awareness, and we have to be more efficient in implementing the sanctions, and also, of course, punishing those who are avoiding the sanctions and making companies aware of the fact what is happening to their products, where they end up. So this is continued, a story to be continued. On the second question, I think it's very interesting. I don't know if I would connect the two to each other, but you do. So the rules-based international order on the one hand and the frozen assets on the other. Of course, there is, I understand the link that you are making, but I would say on the frozen assets, we are progressing. I think there are legitimate concerns of countries like the Belgium and France, but they are also concerns that are being addressed. And I think we are building now a case where we are able to take away those concerns and to be able to use in a smarter way these assets to strengthen Ukraine, and especially now that we see that the war might be prolonged. And that the financing of the Ukrainian resistance to this war is going to be crucial to determine the outcome of this war. And I think on the rules-based international order, I do see the threat that authoritarian countries are posing to our rules-based international order. I see the coordination that is taking place between various countries. The narrative that they are creating in other parts of the world, seemingly more attractive perhaps than the narrative that we have had from the European side. But that is why I think we must work very hard on convincing the rest of the world why we created this rules-based order. It is not some abstract principle. It is not some Western values or something like that. This is about people. This is about protecting people, and this is about creating a future for mankind. It's really about the survival of mankind that we have created these rules. And I think in the end, everybody is much better off if we continue to abide these international rules, even though we know that many countries at this current point are not. Because the alternative is something that's not sustainable. The alternative is that some countries are more influential than others and will also eventually take over the rest of the world. And in that world, the concept of freedom will be very, very different from the concept of freedom under the rules-based order as we have created it. So to be very concrete, let's not give up on the rules-based order. Let's push back against this narrative that is coming from countries like China and Russia, of course, itself, that they are actively putting out there that is poisoning the debate also inside Europe. And let's replace it by the narrative about how we can sustain the rules-based order, which will protect people, which will enable people to have agency. Coming back to our three speakers today, the fact that they are here, that they are telling their story, they can only do that because it's here in Europe. You're protected when you are here in Europe. We want that for Ukraine, and we also want it for other parts of the world.
Thank you, Kajsa.
If I may, just quickly on this first question, I understand this is just a headache, to find out again and again and again that we actually helping to launch a war against ourselves. Ukraine, of course, but this is our war. But anyway, it's very difficult to find a solution here. Our ministry, who is very active every time on EU level, there's another sanction package is discussed, we raise the question, total trade embargo. Total trade embargo. Because at this particular moment, it is very, very difficult to enforce fully the sanctions. We know that it's not nuclear science, end of the day, how to avoid them, unfortunately. We know those routes, we know ways how they do, and to enforce it, it is really, really tough. And then plus, of course, you have China, you have other agencies to help Russians. So, but anyway, we should not give up. And exactly what you do is the right thing to do, to make publicly aware which companies are actually involved in this.
Maybe also a few words rather briefly. I think we really need to fight today to try to do what we can to preserve a rule-based international order. And as was said, it's not a Western invention. This is based on the fundamental principles of the UN Charter. And the alternative, what is the alternative? That is the law of the jungle. That is that the big powers can do whatever they want and get away with it, with impunity. And you know, the key element of this rule-based international order in Europe is actually the European Court of Human Rights and the European Convention of Human Rights and the whole convention system we have built up in Europe. And it's quite unique, if you think about it, how the rights of Europeans, 700 million Europeans today, are protected by this system. And it's unique. You don't find it anywhere else in the world, a similar system. It doesn't matter where you are. If you're in southern Spain or in northern Norway or anywhere else in Europe, you have the same rights, the same protection. And it's a dynamic system. It has developed over the years. It's introduced new conventions, for example, in combating violence against women with the Istanbul Convention. It's really a standard that is helping governments address this issue today. It's the European Convention, again, on, we call it the Istanbul Convention, on combating violence against women and domestic violence. We have seen it on artificial intelligence. The first international treaty now, you know, in regard to artificial intelligence and the respect for human rights, democracy and rule of law, is part of this system now. And it's just been negotiated. That's why I say it's a dynamic system. And the only country who so far has left this system or been kicked out, it took less than 24 hours, as a matter of fact, after the Russian invasion of Ukraine, where Russia was suspended, and 3 more weeks, they were expelled from the Council of Europe, and this whole system of protecting fundamental rights in Europe. Russia is the only country so far who has left this. So I know there are discussions, you mentioned the UK and others, about, you know, this, some feel maybe these judgments are going a little too far and so on, and some are even talking about, you know, leaving this. That would be quite a dramatic decision to do, I think. But it's a complicated issue at the same time, so I will not start a whole discussion on this now, but just a few words on that. And on Ukraine, the court, the European Court of Human Rights, has also come. There are 9,000 pending judgments, cases against Russian Federation. And they just came before the summer with a really important judgment, or it was Netherlands, Ukraine against Russia, dealing with these massive violations going back all the way to 2014. And also the MH17 that the Russians shut down. So this is a part of the justice system that we talk about, which is a topic for the whole seminar we are having together here. Thank you.
Thank you so much. So I'm really very honored to have our witnesses with us today, also our distinguished panelists, because it's important that Ukraine will defeat Russian imperialism, because our victory is a common victory and the best security guarantees for all of us and the future generations. And of course, we cannot achieve peace without justice and accountability. This is also our strong message. And you know that we have very famous T-shirt diplomacy. different one, F-16s, modern tank Leopards, make Russia pay on confiscation of Russian sovereign assets, make Russia small again against Russian imperialistic ambition to extend its borders. Remember, back in 2023, they were talking how to redraw the maritime border of Baltic Sea. So I think when we are talking about the violation of human rights, it's not just war crimes, crimes against humanity, and our witnesses mentioned. And so I think this is the higher time for Europe to demonstrate leadership, not always look at the White House and others, because this is our civilization, our values, our continent, and even confiscation of Russian sovereign assets. We started the legal arguments. It's a violation of UN Charter, and when Russia violated international law obligations, and it's a countermeasures, and it's legal instruments. But I understand some excuses why we are not doing this. So, but finishing, I really think that one day we will see not just recognition, but punishment of all these violators. And also, I think that the T-shirt I'm wearing today, make Bashkortostan free again, which is occupied by Russia since 1740s. So we also seen many cases that Russia used the representatives of national minorities, representatives of different republics, Kalmyks, Buryats, Bashkirs, and others, sending them to fight against Ukrainians. It's ethnic cleansing. So this is why I think one day we will see not just Putin in the keg, but also the memorials of the victims of Russian genocidal wars against Ukraine and others, better to see in the Red Square of Moscow. This will be decolonization of Russian society and a part of Russian de-imperialization. This is what we think, that Ukraine as a spiritual basket of the world, and we have this bigger mission, and justice is important. So thank you, everyone. Thank you, Warsaw Security Forum, for this panel, and thank you, our speakers, and hope all our recommendations, and especially with work with American friends, will be successful. Thank you.